The crash in the cornfield. The evening sun was painting the Nebraska sky in shades of orange and purple when Trevor Walsh heard the sound. It wasn't thunder, though it rumbled through his chest like a storm. It wasn't a plane, though something was definitely screaming through the air above his property. He'd been checking the irrigation lines in the south field when the sky just tore open. Trevor had lived on this farm his entire life. 41 years of sunrises over cornfields, of knowing every inch of this land like the back of his hand. He'd seen tornadoes, hailstorms, even a small plane make an emergency landing on his property back in '97. But he'd never seen anything like this. The object came down fast, trailing red light like a bleeding wound across the darkening sky. It changed direction mid-flight, banking hard to the left, then the right, like whatever was controlling it was fighting to stay airborne. Trevor's instincts screamed at him to run, to get in his truck and drive far away, but his feet carried him toward the impact site instead. The walk across his property took about 12 minutes, though it felt like hours. His heart was hammering against his ribs, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The closer he got, the stranger things became. The corn wasn't just knocked down. It was gone. Completely vaporized in a perfect circle that had to be 30 feet across, leaving nothing but scorched earth and a smell like burning metal mixed with something sweet he couldn't identify. And in the center of that circle sat something that absolutely did not belong on his farm in rural Nebraska. Trevor had watched enough science fiction movies to know he was looking at some kind of vehicle. But seeing it on a screen and standing 10 feet away from the real thing were two completely different experiences. The bike, or whatever it was, looked like someone had taken a motorcycle and rebuilt it from materials that barely reflected light. It was mostly black, but not regular black. This was the kind of black that seemed to swallow the fading sunlight, making it hard to focus on the edges. Parts of it seemed to shimmer and shift, like looking at something through heat waves on hot asphalt. The machine was hovering. Actually hovering, about 2 inches off the ground, even though half of it was clearly damaged. Panels hung loose, sparking with energy that danced in colors Trevor didn't have names for. At the center was some kind of crystal that pulsed with dying light, like a heart that was running out of beats. But what made Trevor's blood run cold was the rider. She was slumped over the handlebars, completely still. At first glance, she looked human enough. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with long dark hair that fell past her shoulders. But as Trevor got closer, the differences became impossible to ignore. Her skin was pale. Not the pale of someone who didn't get enough sun, but the pale of fresh snow, of milk, of things that had never seen daylight. She wore some kind of armor that seemed to be made from the same light-absorbing material as the bike, fitted perfectly to her frame. Trevor's hands were shaking harder now as he reached out to check for a pulse. He'd been a volunteer EMT for 6 years before his back gave out. The training kicked in automatically. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck, searching for the carotid artery. Nothing. Her skin was ice cold under his touch, like she'd been dead for hours. Trevor pulled his hand back, his mind racing. What was he supposed to do? Call the sheriff? Call the Air Force? This was way above his pay grade. He started to back away, already pulling out his phone, when her eyes snapped open. They were violet. Not blue with a purple tint. Not some trick of the dying light. Actually violet, like the color existed only in those eyes and nowhere else in nature. Trevor found himself frozen, staring into those impossible eyes, unable to move or breathe or think. She moved so fast that Trevor's brain couldn't process it. 1 second she was slumped over the bike, the next she had him pinned to the ground with one hand wrapped around his throat. Her fingers felt like steel cables, cold and impossibly strong. Trevor tried to struggle, tried to fight back, but it was like trying to move a mountain. She wasn't just strong. She was beyond strong, holding him down with what seemed like zero effort. Her face was inches from his now, those violet eyes studying him with an intensity that made him feel like a bug under a microscope. Her lips pulled back slightly, and Trevor saw something that made his blood turn to ice in his veins. Her teeth were just slightly wrong. The canines were a fraction too long, too sharp, too predatory. Where am I? Her voice was strange. Musical, almost pretty, but with an accent Trevor couldn't place. It didn't sound European or Asian or anything he recognized. It sounded other, like someone who'd learned English from books but had never actually heard it spoken. Trevor tried to answer, but her hand was still on his throat, cutting off most of his air. He managed to choke out, Nebraska. United States. Planet Earth. She stared at him for what felt like an eternity, those violet eyes searching his face for something. Then, suddenly, she released him and stumbled backward. Trevor gasped for air, his hand going to his throat, feeling the bruises that were already forming under his skin. Earth, she repeated, looking around at the cornfield, at the darkening sky, at Trevor's farmhouse in the distance. Sector 7. I'm in the right system, at least. She turned back to her bike and said something in a language that sounded like wind through a graveyard, all harsh consonants and flowing vowels that hurt Trevor's ears to hear. Trevor sat up slowly, every instinct screaming at him to run. But he'd never been good at running from things, and something about the way she moved, the way she looked at her damaged bike, reminded him of the wounded animals he'd found on his property over the years. Dangerous, yes. But also desperate. You gonna kill me? Trevor asked, surprised at how steady his voice sounded. Or can we talk like civilized people? She laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. It was bitter and tired and ancient. Civilized. Yes. I apologize for the violence. My name is Nina. My vehicle malfunctioned during a pursuit. I crash-landed here. A pursuit? Trevor got to his feet slowly, keeping his hands where she could see them. You some kind of cop? Something similar to that concept, yes. Nina moved to her bike, her hands running over the damaged panels with obvious distress. I need to repair this quickly. But I assume your planet doesn't have graviton welding technology or fusion crystal matrices. Trevor stepped closer, his natural curiosity overriding his fear. He'd spent 8 years in the Navy working on engines before coming back to run the family farm. The damaged bike called to him the same way any broken machine did. That glowing thing in the middle, that's your power source? Nina's head snapped up, her violet eyes wide with surprise. You understand basic engineering principles. I understand engines. Doesn't matter if they run on gasoline or whatever that crystal thing is. You need power, you need containment, you need a way to release that power in a controlled manner for propulsion. Trevor pointed to a cracked housing near the crystal. And that there is your problem. The containment is breached. Your power source is bleeding energy all over the place. Surprised this thing is still hovering at all. For the first time since she'd woken up, Nina smiled. It didn't quite reach those strange eyes, but it was something. Perhaps we can assist each other. I repair my vehicle, you learn about technology your species won't discover for at least 100 of your years. A fair exchange? Trevor knew he should say no. Should call someone with more authority, more knowledge, more something. But he'd been alone on this farm for 2 years since his wife Amy died, and the emptiness had been eating at him. And there was something in Nina's eyes, behind all that alien strangeness, that looked lost and desperate and alone. My barn's about half a mile that way, Trevor said, making a decision that would change everything. We can tow your bike with my truck if you help me rig up a harness. Got all my tools there, and nobody's gonna bother us this time of night. They worked in the growing darkness, fashioning a makeshift trailer from Trevor's flatbed truck. Nina was strong. Impossibly, unnaturally strong. She lifted parts of the bike that Trevor couldn't even budge, handling them like they weighed nothing. By the time they got the bike loaded and drove back to the barn, full night had fallen over the farm. Trevor set up his work lights, the bright LEDs flooding the barn with harsh white light. Nina paced like a caged wolf while Trevor gathered his tools and tried to make sense of what he was looking at. The bike's engine, or whatever it was, defied everything he knew about mechanics. But engines were engines, and Trevor had always been good at figuring out how things worked. Nina kept checking something that looked like a compass, except the needle didn't point north. It spun in slow circles before locking onto a direction southwest of the farm. Trevor watched her check it for the 5th time in as many minutes. What's that thing? He asked, using a plasma torch from Nina's toolkit to cut into the damaged panel. The tool was incredible, cutting through the alien metal like butter. A tracking device, Nina said without looking up. I told you I was pursuing someone. This allows me to follow them. And they're here? On Earth? Yes. Unfortunately. Trevor wanted to ask more questions, had about 1,000 of them lined up in his head, but Nina had gone completely still. She was staring at his hand. Trevor looked down and saw he'd cut himself on a sharp edge of the alien metal. It wasn't serious, just a thin line across his palm, but blood was welling up from the cut. Nina's eyes changed. The violet drained away, replaced by crimson red that seemed to glow in the barn's harsh lighting. Her lips pulled back from her teeth again, and Trevor saw those 2 sharp canines fully for the first time. She took a step toward him, her whole body tensing like a predator about to strike. Get away from me, Nina's voice came out strained, desperate, wrong. Trevor, you need to run. Now. Right now. But Trevor couldn't move. He was frozen by those burning red eyes, by the predatory grace as she took another step toward him. He could see the struggle on her face, see her fighting against something primal and powerful inside her. And then she was gone. The barn door slammed open hard enough to tear it half off its hinges, and Nina vanished into the night. Trevor saw her moving impossibly fast, leaving what looked like after images in the air. Part 2, The Truth About Nina. Trevor didn't sleep that night. He sat on his porch with his grandfather's old hunting rifle across his lap, watching the darkness beyond his property line. Every shadow looked like it might be Nina coming back. Every sound made his finger twitch toward the trigger. The rational part of his brain kept telling him to call someone, anyone. The sheriff, the military, maybe even the FBI. But every time he reached for his phone, he stopped. Something about the way Nina had warned him before she ran kept replaying in his mind. She could have attacked him. Should have attacked him, based on the hunger he'd seen in those red eyes. But instead, she told him to run. She'd fought against whatever instinct was driving her and disappeared into the night to protect him. Dawn came slowly, turning the Nebraska sky from black to gray to pale blue. Trevor was considering whether he had enough energy left to make coffee when he saw her walking up the dirt road. Nina moved differently now. Slower, more careful, like every step took concentration. She stopped about 50 feet from the porch, her hands raised and empty. In the morning light, she looked tired. Her pale skin somehow looked even paler, and there were dark circles under her violet eyes. "I won't come closer unless you give permission," she called out. Her voice sounded strained. "I owe you an explanation and an apology for last night." Trevor studied her for a long moment. He could shoot her from here. The rifle was loaded with hollow points that would drop a charging bear. But his finger didn't move to the trigger. Instead, he set the gun aside and stood up. "You like coffee?" he asked. The confusion on her face would have been funny under different circumstances. "I don't drink coffee. But I appreciate the gesture." "Come on then. We'll talk in the kitchen where the lights are better." They sat at opposite ends of Trevor's kitchen table. He poured himself a cup of coffee that was probably strong enough to strip paint, then poured a second cup and pushed it across to Nina anyway. She wrapped her cold hands around it but didn't drink. "My species is called sanguivore," Nina began, staring down at the coffee like it held answers. "We evolved on a planet very different from Earth. Harsh conditions, limited resources, extreme competition for survival. Our bodies adapted to extract nutrients from the life essence of other creatures. What you would call blood." Trevor's hand went automatically to the bandage he'd wrapped around his cut palm. "So you're a vampire. Like in the movies." Nina looked up, genuine surprise in her violet eyes. "Your species has stories about beings like mine?" "Dracula, Nosferatu, Twilight if you count the sparkly ones. Yeah, we've got vampire stories." Trevor took a long drink of his coffee, needing the caffeine to process this. "So last night, when you saw my blood, you wanted to drink it?" "Yes." She didn't flinch from the accusation. "I haven't fed in 19 of your Earth days. When I smelled your blood, every instinct I have screamed at me to feed. I almost lost control completely." "But you didn't." "No. But it was close. Too close." Nina's hands tightened around the coffee cup. 500 years ago, my species made a choice. We joined something called the Galactic Concordat, a union of civilized worlds spread across many star systems. One of the primary laws is that predation on sapient species is absolutely forbidden. We developed alternatives. Synthetic blood substitutes, farming programs with non-sapient animals, voluntary donation systems on worlds that understand what we are. Trevor leaned back in his chair, trying to wrap his head around the idea of aliens having laws and civilizations spread across multiple planets. "So your people decided to stop being monsters?" "We decided to evolve beyond our base nature," Nina corrected. "But not all of my kind agreed with that choice. Some see the Concordat laws as weakness, as denying what we truly are." "And that's who you're chasing?" Nina nodded slowly. "His name is Victor Drake. He's one of the oldest of our kind, nearly 800 years old. He rejected everything the Concordat stands for. 3 months ago, he escaped from a detention facility and fled to uncontacted sectors of the galaxy. Sectors like yours." "Wait, uncontacted?" Trevor set his coffee cup down. "You're saying Earth isn't part of this Concordat thing? Your species isn't ready yet, according to Concordat protocols. You're still fractured into competing nations, still developing your technology, still learning to work together." Nina's expression softened slightly. The plan was to wait another century before making official contact. But Victor didn't care about protocols. He came here because Earth is isolated, undefended, and full of prey. The way she said that last word made Trevor's stomach turn. He's been taking people. Yes. I've tracked 7 disappearances across 3 of your states over the past month. Your law enforcement believes it's a human criminal, a serial killer perhaps. They have no idea what they're actually dealing with. Nina pulled out the compass device Trevor had seen her checking. This locks onto sanguivore biosignatures. Victor is within 100 miles of your farm right now. And he's not just feeding. He's keeping his victims alive in stasis, feeding from them slowly to make them last longer. Trevor felt sick. 7 people, scared and trapped and being used as food by some alien monster. And you're supposed to stop him by yourself. I'm a warden. It's what I've done for 200 years. I hunt rogues like Victor, bring them back to face justice, protect the innocent. She gestured toward the barn where her bike sat damaged. But without my vehicle repaired, I can't close the distance before he realizes I'm here. He'll either run to another system, or worse, he'll kill all his captives and disappear. Either way, people die. Trevor thought about that for a minute. 7 people who had families, jobs, lives. 7 people who were counting on someone to save them, even if they didn't know it yet. He thought about Amy, about how she'd spent her whole life as a social worker helping people who couldn't help themselves. About what she'd say if she were sitting at this table right now. How long to fix your bike? He asked. With proper equipment and materials? Perhaps 8 hours. With what you have available on this farm. Nina shook her head. 2 days, maybe 3. If it's even possible. Then we better get started. Trevor stood up and walked to his refrigerator. From the back, he pulled out a small cooler. Inside were 4 bags of blood from his monthly donation to the Red Cross. He'd been planning to drop them off in town next week. You said your people have voluntary donation programs on some worlds. Well, here's my voluntary donation. You need to be at full strength if you're gonna save those people. Nina stared at the blood bags like Trevor had just offered her $1 million. Trevor, you don't understand. Direct consumption of blood from a compatible species creates a bond between sanguivores. It's not the same as synthetic substitutes. There are psychological effects, emotional connections that form. It's considered sacred among my people, reserved for life partners. Will it turn me into one of you? No, nothing like that. You'll remain completely human. Will it make you strong enough to work on that bike and eventually go save those people? Yes, but... Then take it. Trevor pushed the cooler across the table. We'll worry about the rest later. Right now, 7 people need our help, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna let them suffer because we're worried about emotional side effects. Nina's hands shook as she took the cooler. You're remarkable. Your species is isolated, considered primitive by Concordat standards, and yet you're offering help to a complete alien without hesitation. Those 7 people aren't aliens to me. They're Americans, maybe. Humans, definitely. And if you can save them, then I'm gonna help you do it. Trevor headed for the door. Now come on. Drink up and let's get to work. That bike isn't gonna fix itself. Nina fed while Trevor politely turned away and pretended to organize his tools. When he looked back, the change was dramatic. Color had returned to her pale cheeks, and her eyes were bright violet again, no hint of that hungry red. She looked stronger, more alert, more alive. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon. Trevor's practical knowledge of engines and mechanics combined with Nina's understanding of alien technology in ways neither of them expected. She explained the principles of fusion crystal matrices and graviton fields while Trevor jury-rigged cooling systems from his tractor parts and irrigation equipment. It reminded him of his Navy days, making do with whatever was available to keep the machines running. Nina was patient, answering Trevor's endless questions about her people, her world, the Concordat. She described a galaxy full of thousands of intelligent species, each with their own cultures and technologies and ways of seeing the universe. She talked about worlds where the sky was purple, where the oceans were made of liquid methane, where gravity was so strong that humans would be crushed flat. Why keep Earth isolated? Trevor asked while welding a replacement housing for one of the damaged panels. If there are thousands of species out there, why not invite us to join? Because first contact changes everything, Nina said quietly. Your species would split into factions. Some would embrace the Concordat, others would fear it, still others would try to exploit it for personal gain. Wars have started over first contact on less divided worlds than yours. The Concordat prefers to wait until species develop space travel on their own, until they've learned to work together as a unified planet. So we're not ready. Most of my people don't think so. They see your wars, your environmental damage, your inability to cooperate even within your own species. Nina met his eyes. But I'm starting to think they're wrong. You've seen me at my most monstrous, learned what I truly am, and your first instinct was to help me save others. That speaks to something remarkable in your character. Perhaps in your species' character. Trevor felt his face heat up at the compliment. I'm just one farmer from Nebraska. Don't judge all of humanity by me. Perhaps I should. Perhaps we all should. They worked in comfortable silence after that, falling into a rhythm. Trevor would identify a problem, Nina would explain the alien technology involved, and together they'd figure out a solution. It was almost peaceful, working in the barn with someone who understood the satisfaction of fixing broken things. Then the compass went crazy. The device started beeping rapidly, the needle spinning in frantic circles before locking onto a point much closer than before. Nina's head snapped up, her whole body going tense. Her eyes flashed red for just a second before she controlled it. He knows I'm here, she said, her voice deadly calm. Victor's moving toward us. He's less than 50 miles away now. Trevor grabbed his rifle from where he'd leaned it against the workbench. How long until he gets here? At his speed? 2 hours, maybe less. Nina looked at the half-repaired bike, then at Trevor, then back at the tracking device. We can't run. He'll just find us again. And I can't let him get past me to the population centers. Then we don't run, Trevor said, checking his ammunition. We finish this bike fast as we can, and we go meet him on our terms. Part 3, the hunt begins. Trevor and Nina worked like people possessed for the next hour, their hands moving faster than thought. Every wire Trevor connected, every panel Nina welded back into place, brought the bike closer to functionality. But it wasn't going to be enough. Even working at top speed, they needed at least 6 more hours before the bike would be flight ready. We can't wait, Nina said, watching the tracking device with growing tension. The signal had stopped moving. Victor was holding position about 40 miles southwest. He's setting up somewhere. Probably fortifying his location, preparing for my arrival. Trevor wiped the sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of grease across his skin. Then we use my truck. It's not as fast as your bike, but it'll get us there. Trevor, you don't have to come with me. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. Trevor started gathering supplies, his military training kicking in automatically. This is my planet he's hunting on. Those are my people he's got locked up somewhere. And besides, you said it yourself, you need me. Nina looked like she wanted to argue, but the tracking device beeped again. Victor's signal had moved slightly, adjusting position. He was waiting for them, and they both knew it. They loaded Trevor's pickup truck with everything that might be useful. His hunting rifles, ammunition, road flares, a chainsaw, climbing rope, even his welding equipment. Nina contributed what she could from her damaged bike, a couple of weapon-like devices that hummed with barely contained energy, some kind of scanning equipment, and a first aid kit that looked more advanced than anything Trevor had seen in a hospital. Southwest, you said? Trevor started the engine. Nina held up her tracking device, now connected to Trevor's phone through some kind of wireless link she'd rigged up in minutes. A map appeared on his screen showing a blinking red dot. 42.3 miles. If I'm reading your topography correctly, it's an old military installation. Trevor's blood ran cold. Whitmore Air Station. Been abandoned since the 80s. Underground bunkers, reinforced structures, its own power grid that probably still works. He pulled onto the highway, pushing his old truck faster than he had in years. Smart. Remote location, defensible position, and nobody goes out there anymore. The drive felt both too long and too short. Nina spent the time teaching Trevor everything she could about fighting sanguivores. Her kind were incredibly strong and fast, but they weren't invincible. Massive trauma to the brain or heart would kill them. Fire was effective because their bodies couldn't regenerate burned tissue quickly. And despite what Earth's folklore said, sunlight didn't hurt them at all. What about that silver thing you mentioned? Trevor asked, remembering her earlier comment. Silver causes a chemical reaction with our blood. It burns, slows healing, makes us weaker. Nina checked one of her weapons, making adjustments Trevor couldn't follow. Not fatal on its own, but combined with other injuries, it can be decisive. Trevor thought about his grandfather's old hunting knife, solid silver with an engraved handle. It was sitting in his glove compartment. He'd been meaning to get it appraised but never had the time. Now it might save his life. They parked 2 miles from Whitmore and continued on foot. The sun was starting its descent toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Nina moved through the brush like a ghost, making no sound at all. Trevor did his best to keep up, grateful for all those years of hunting deer in these same woods. The fence around Whitmore was 10 feet of rusted chain link topped with ancient barbed wire. Trevor cut through it with bolt cutters while Nina stood watch, her enhanced senses alert for any sign of danger. Inside the perimeter, the base looked like something from a horror movie. Crumbling buildings covered in graffiti, cracked asphalt overtaken by weeds, and everywhere, the sense of abandonment and decay. But at the center of the base stood a concrete bunker that looked far too well maintained. There, Nina whispered, pointing. The door has been replaced recently. I can smell fresh metal and electronics. Trevor studied the bunker through his rifle scope. She was right. The door was new, modern, completely out of place among the ruins. Security cameras were mounted on the corners, so small and well hidden that he never would have spotted them without Nina's guidance. He's watching us right now, Trevor said. I know. He wants us to come in. Nina's jaw tightened. It's a trap. Every trap has a weakness. Trevor lowered his rifle and pulled out his phone, bringing up satellite images of the base he'd downloaded during the drive. Look, there's the main entrance where that new door is. But these old Cold War bunkers always had emergency exits. Here, and here, 2 more access points on the north and east sides. Nina's eyes widened. You're suggesting we split up? I'm suggesting we don't walk through the front door like he expects. Trevor traced possible routes on the map. You're faster and stronger. You go in loud through the main entrance, get his attention. I'll circle around to the east exit and come in quiet. While he's focused on you, I can search for the prisoners. That's incredibly dangerous for you. Everything about this is dangerous. Trevor met her eyes. But those 7 people don't have time for us to come up with a perfect plan. We work with what we've got and adapt on the move. They were still planning their approach when a scream echoed from inside the bunker. It was distant, muffled by concrete and steel, but unmistakably human. Unmistakably terrified. Nina's eyes flashed red. He's taunting us. Trying to make us rush in without thinking. Then let's not give him what he wants. Trevor checked his rifle one more time, then pulled out the silver knife and strapped it to his belt. Stick to the plan. You go loud in 15 minutes. That gives me time to reach the east entrance and get inside. Trevor, if something goes wrong. Then you save those people anyway. That's the mission. He started moving before she could argue, circling wide around the bunker complex. The east entrance was partially buried under debris and overgrown vegetation. Trevor had to dig through years of accumulated dirt and plant growth to reach the door. It was locked, but the mechanism was old and corroded. A few well-placed hits with a rock broke the lock mechanism, and the door groaned open. The stairs descended into darkness. Trevor pulled out his flashlight and started down, his rifle ready. The air smelled stale and damp, with an underlying chemical scent that made his nose wrinkle. Emergency lighting still functioned, casting everything in dim red that reminded him uncomfortably of Nina's hungry eyes. The lower level was a maze of corridors and abandoned rooms. Trevor moved carefully, checking corners, listening for any sound. He'd made it about 50 yards into the complex when he heard Nina make her entrance. The sound of the main door being torn off its hinges echoed through the entire structure. Then came Nina's voice, amplified somehow, filling every corridor. Victor Drake. I am Warden Nina of the Concordat. You are charged with violation of sapient rights accords and 7 counts of predation on protected species. Surrender now and face justice. The response was laughter. Deep, male, echoing from deeper in the complex. Little Nina. Still playing Concordat lapdog after all these years. Tell me, do you really think your borrowed morality makes you anything other than a predator? Trevor used the distraction to move faster, following signs that pointed toward what had been the communications center. If he was Victor, that's where he'd keep prisoners, a large room with only one entrance, easy to defend. He was right. The communications room door stood open, and inside, Trevor saw them. 7 pods lined against the wall, each containing a person suspended in some kind of stasis field. They looked peaceful, almost like they were sleeping, but medical equipment Trevor didn't recognize monitored their vital signs. Tubes connected to each pod, and Trevor's stomach turned when he realized what they were for. 2 of the prisoners were men in their 30s. 3 were women of various ages. The last 2 were teenagers, a boy and a girl, probably high school students. All of them pale, all of them thinner than they should be. Trevor moved toward the pods, looking for controls to release them. That's when Victor spoke from right behind him. How resourceful. A human making it this far. Trevor spun, bringing his rifle up, but Victor was already moving. The sanguivore crossed the distance between them in a blur, batting the rifle aside like it weighed nothing. Trevor got one look at his face, handsome, ancient, with eyes that were completely black, before Victor's hand closed around his throat. Brave for prey, Victor said, lifting Trevor off the ground. I'll give you that. But bravery doesn't change what you are. Trevor couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Black spots danced across his vision. But his hand found the silver knife on his belt, and with the last of his strength, he drove it into Victor's shoulder. Victor's scream shook the walls. He dropped Trevor and staggered back, smoke rising from where the silver blade had pierced his flesh. Trevor hit the ground hard, gasping for air, his throat on fire. Silver, Victor hissed, pulling the knife out. His hand blistered where he touched it. Clever little human. Then Nina crashed through the doorway like a force of nature. She slammed into Victor with enough force to crack the concrete wall behind him. They went down in a tangle of limbs and fury, moving so fast Trevor could barely track them. The pods. Nina shouted while grappling with Victor. Release them. Trevor scrambled to the control panel. The interface was alien, but panic made him reckless. He started hitting buttons, hoping something would work. The first pod hissed and opened with a pneumatic sound. The woman inside gasped awake, her eyes wide with terror. It's okay, I'm here to help, Trevor managed to croak out, his throat still aching. Can you walk? She nodded, trembling. Trevor pointed to the door. Run. Get out of here. Follow the red emergency lights to the exit. Don't stop for anything. He opened the second pod, then the third. The prisoner stumbled out, weak and disoriented but alive. Behind him, Nina and Victor's fight had destroyed half the room. They crashed through equipment, through walls, their supernatural strength tearing everything apart. Trevor got the fourth pod open, the teenage boy. He caught him before he fell. Listen to me. Follow the others. Get outside. You understand? The boy nodded, tears streaming down his face. Trevor pushed him toward the exit with the others. Victor noticed what was happening. With a roar of rage, he threw Nina aside hard enough to leave a crater in the wall and lunged for the fleeing prisoners. His claws extended, his fangs bared, every inch the monster he truly was. Trevor did the only thing he could. He threw himself into Victor's path. It was like being hit by a truck. They went down together, Victor's claws raking across Trevor's chest and arms. Pain exploded white-hot through his entire body. He could feel his ribs crack, feel blood pouring from the wounds. But he held on, wrapping his arms around Victor, using his body weight to slow him down, giving the prisoners precious seconds to escape. Stupid human, Victor snarled, raising his hand for a killing blow. You die for nothing. Nina's weapon bolt took Victor through the spine. The specialized projectile, designed specifically to paralyze sanguivores, punched through Victor's back and protruded from his chest. His eyes went wide with shock. His body seized up, unable to move, his regeneration fighting against the weapon's effects. The Concordat remembers its own, Nina said coldly, standing with her weapon still smoking. And it never forgets those who betray it. Victor collapsed, paralyzed but conscious, rage burning in his black eyes. Trevor lay on the floor, bleeding, his vision going gray. He could hear footsteps running, the prisoners reaching the exit. Could hear Nina rushing to his side, her cool hands pressing against his wounds. Trevor, stay with me, she said, and he could hear fear in her voice. Real fear. The others are safe. You saved them. Just hold on. Did we win? Trevor managed to ask. Yes. Nina's hands were shaking as she examined his injuries. But Trevor, these wounds? Victor's claws carry venom. It's already in your bloodstream. Your body can't fight it. Guess this is it then. Trevor tried to smile but it came out as a grimace. The pain was fading now, replaced by numbness that spread from his chest outward. No. Nina's voice was fierce. There's a way. My blood can counteract the venom, accelerate your healing. But Trevor, you need to understand, a direct blood exchange creates a permanent bond. You'll feel what I feel, sense where I am. And I'll sense you. It's forever. Trevor's vision was getting darker. He could feel himself slipping away. Will it save my life? Yes. Then do it. Not ready to die yet. Part 4, The Bond and the Final Stand. Nina bit into her own wrist without hesitation, violet blood welling up from the wound. She pressed it to Trevor's lips, and for a moment, he resisted. The idea of drinking blood, even to save his life, went against every human instinct he had. But the pain in his chest was fading into a coldness that terrified him more than any alien vampire could. He drank. The blood tasted like lightning and starlight, like something that existed outside normal human experience. It burned going down his throat, but not in a painful way. More like drinking hot coffee on a freezing morning, warmth spreading through his body from the inside out. Trevor felt his wounds begin to close, felt his broken ribs shift back into place with grinding sensations that should have hurt but didn't. And then he felt her. It wasn't like hearing someone's voice or seeing their face. It was deeper than that, more fundamental. Trevor could suddenly feel Nina's presence in his mind like a second heartbeat. Her fear for his survival crashed over him like a wave. Her relief as his wounds healed mixed with guilt that she'd brought this danger to his doorstep. Her loneliness, centuries of it, hunting alone across the stars. And underneath all of that, something warmer. Something that felt almost like hope. Oh, Trevor gasped, pulling back from her wrist. His chest was completely healed, not even a scar remaining. I can feel you. Inside my head, but not, it's like you're part of me now. And I can feel you, Nina said softly, helping him sit up. Your courage, even when you're terrified. Your kindness toward strangers. Your grief for your wife Amy, and how you honor her memory by helping others. Trevor, you're remarkable. Before Trevor could respond to that, a sound made them both freeze. Nina's tracking device, still attached to her belt, was screaming in alarm. She grabbed it, and Trevor watched her face go pale, even paler than normal. What? What's wrong? Trevor asked, though through their new bond, he could already feel her horror. Victor wasn't alone. Nina's hands shook as she showed him the display. Where there had been one signal for Victor, now 4 more appeared on the screen, all moving toward their location. He called for reinforcements. 4 more rogue sanguivores, and they'll be here in less than 40 minutes. Trevor looked at Victor's paralyzed body, then at his own blood-stained clothes, then back at Nina. Through their bond, he could feel her calculating odds, planning escape routes, all while drowning in guilt that she'd gotten him involved in this. Stop that, Trevor said. Stop what? Blaming yourself. I can feel it through this bond thing. Trevor got to his feet, testing his newly healed body. Everything worked perfectly, better than it had in years. And I'm not running. We didn't save those 7 people just to let 4 more monsters set up shop on Earth. Trevor, you don't understand. 4 fully fed sanguivores against 1 warden? Those are impossible odds. We need to run, regroup, call for Concordat backup. Which will take how long? Nina was silent, which was answer enough. Right. So we make our stand here. Trevor was already moving, his mind working through tactics. Your bike still needs hours of work, but we've got this base, we've got weapons, and we've got something they don't expect. What's that? Me. Trevor pulled out his phone and started making calls. And some friends who owe me favors. How long did you say we have? 37 minutes now. Then I better talk fast. Trevor made 4 calls in rapid succession. The first was to Beth's brother, Jack Coleman, who ran a construction company and had access to heavy equipment. The second was to his old Navy buddy, Rita Walsh, who'd gone into private security after her service. The third was to a guy named Carlos Mendez who owned the biggest gun store in 3 counties. The last call was to his neighbor, David Park, who'd been a combat medic in Iraq. Each conversation was short and to the point. Whitmore Air Station. 30 minutes. Bring everything. Lives depend on it. Trust me. Nina stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You just called civilians to fight against apex predators. I called warriors, Trevor corrected, already pulling Victor's paralyzed body into a storage room and locking it. And I called them because humans don't roll over and die just because the odds are bad. Now help me turn this place into a fortress. They worked with frantic speed. Nina had centuries of tactical experience, while Trevor knew every inch of these old Cold War bunkers from exploring them as a kid. Together, they created a defensive position that would make any military planner proud. Nina stripped parts from her damaged bike, creating improvised weapons and shields. Trevor used his knowledge of the base to set up choke points and kill zones. They rigged motion sensors from Nina's equipment at every entrance. They created barriers from old furniture and equipment that would slow but not stop a sanguivore charge. Jack arrived first, his truck loaded with welding equipment, steel beams, and a portable generator powerful enough to run a small town. He took one look at Nina's violet eyes and extended fangs and just nodded. So we're fighting space vampires. Beth would have loved this. Rita showed up 10 minutes later with tactical gear, night vision equipment, and enough military discipline to make even Nina impressed. She assessed the defensive positions Trevor had created and immediately started improving them. Good basics, but you're leaving the east corridor exposed. Carlos rolled in with a truck bed full of weapons that made Trevor wonder about licensing laws. Rifles, shotguns, even a couple of items that looked decidedly illegal. Everything's loaded with silver-tipped ammunition, Carlos said, grinning. Been making custom rounds as a hobby. Guess I finally found a use for them. David arrived last, carrying medical supplies that would stock a small hospital. He set up a triage station in the communications room, then looked at Trevor's blood-soaked but uninjured chest with professional curiosity. Gonna need an explanation for that later. Later, Trevor agreed. Right now, we need you combat ready. Nina gathered them in the command center they'd established. Trevor could feel her nervousness through their bond, her certainty that these humans wouldn't survive the next hour. But he could also feel her growing respect as she watched them prepare with calm professionalism. 4 hostile sanguivores inbound, Nina began, displaying her tracking data on a tablet Jack had rigged up. Each one is faster than any human, strong enough to tear through steel doors, and has been feeding without restriction for months. They're coming because we captured their leader, which makes them motivated and angry. So how do we kill them? Rita asked, no fear in her voice. Nina pulled up holographic displays from her equipment. Massive trauma to the brain or heart. Fire works exceptionally well because our tissue can't regenerate from burns quickly. Silver causes a chemical reaction that weakens us and slows healing. Despite your folklore, sunlight doesn't harm us, and we're actually most dangerous at night when our predatory instincts are strongest. So we trap them, slow them down, and hit them until they stop moving, Jack said, nodding. I've fought bears that sound less dangerous. These aren't bears, Nina warned. No, Rita agreed. They're targets. And targets can be eliminated with proper tactics and fire discipline. Trevor felt a surge of pride for his friends. They weren't denying the danger or pretending to be fearless. They were simply deciding that the threat didn't matter. People needed protecting, so they'd protect them. It was that simple. The tracking device started beeping faster. Nina's head snapped up. They're here. 4 contacts, approaching from different directions. They're surrounding the facility. Smart, Rita observed. Cutting off escape routes. Then it's a good thing we're not planning to escape, Trevor said. He could feel through the bond that Nina wanted to order them all to run, wanted to face this threat alone to keep them safe. Nina, stop. We're doing this together. You'll die, she whispered. Maybe. But 7 people are going home to their families tonight because we fought together. That's worth the risk. Trevor checked his rifle one last time. Besides, you said it yourself. Humans aren't ready for first contact because we can't work together. Let's prove the Concordat wrong. Everyone moved to their assigned positions. Jack took the north corridor with his welding equipment rigged as a flamethrower. Rita positioned herself at the east entrance with overlapping fields of fire. Carlos covered the west approach with enough firepower to stop a small army. David stayed in the center with Trevor and Nina, ready to respond wherever the fighting got worst. They didn't have to wait long. The first attacker came through the north entrance like a missile. A female sanguivore in tactical gear who cleared the barricades in a single jump. Jack's improvised flamethrower caught her midair, and her scream of pain and rage echoed through the entire complex. She hit the ground burning, rolling to extinguish the flames. Jack's second burst caught her again, and this time, she retreated. Contact north. Flamethrower is effective. Jack's voice came through the radios they distributed. The eastern and western attackers came simultaneously, a coordinated assault. Rita met hers with disciplined 3-round bursts from her rifle, the silver-tipped rounds forcing the male sanguivore to take cover. Carlos unleashed hell on his attacker, the sheer volume of fire keeping the creature at bay even though most shots missed. The 4th sanguivore came through the ceiling. The creature dropped into the command center without warning, having torn through the concrete and rebar like paper. It was male, massive, built like a professional wrestler with black eyes that reflected the emergency lighting. Nina moved to intercept, but the creature was targeting Trevor. It crossed the room in a blur, claws extended for a killing strike. Trevor brought his rifle up, knowing he'd never be fast enough, feeling Nina's terror through their bond. And then something amazing happened. Through the bond, Trevor could suddenly sense exactly where the sanguivore was, could predict its movement before it happened. It was like Nina's enhanced senses were feeding directly into his awareness. Left. Trevor shouted, diving right while firing. His shot went wide, but it made the creature dodge, giving Nina the opening she needed. She tackled it from the side with bone-crushing force, and they went through the wall into the next room. Nina. Trevor followed, but what he saw made him stop. She was fighting 3 of them now. The female with the burns and 2 of the males had converged on her position, recognizing her as the primary threat. They moved in perfect coordination, centuries of predatory instinct guiding their attacks. Nina was good, but she was outnumbered. Trevor watched her take a slash across her ribs, felt her pain through the bond like it was his own. Watched her weapon get knocked away by a lucky strike. That's when Trevor realized something. The bond worked both ways. If he could sense Nina's position and awareness, maybe she could sense his. Nina. Your left, 3 feet, low. Trevor called out, letting his human tactical thinking flow through their connection. Nina didn't question. She spun and thrust her remaining blade exactly where Trevor indicated, catching one of the male attackers off guard. The weapon punched through his chest, and he collapsed with a sound like tearing metal. It works. Nina's voice was filled with amazement and fierce joy. Trevor, keep calling positions. They became something new in that moment. Not human and sanguivore, but something between. Trevor could see the fight through Nina's enhanced senses while she gained access to his tactical thinking and pattern recognition. When one attacker tried to circle behind her, Trevor saw it through their bond and warned her. When another feinted left, Trevor recognized the tell and called it out. Rita and Jack arrived, adding their firepower to the fight. Silver rounds and flames forced the sanguivores back, created openings that Nina exploited ruthlessly. Carlos's heavy weapons fire kept the 4th attacker pinned in the western corridor, unable to reinforce his allies. The massive sanguivore that had come through the ceiling made one final desperate charge at Trevor, recognizing him as the tactical coordinator. Nina intercepted with a flying tackle that should have been impossible, driven by Trevor's warning through their bond. They crashed together into the concrete wall with enough force to crack it. Nina's blade found his heart. The burned female tried to flee, her injuries too severe to continue fighting. Rita tracked her movement with professional calm and put 3 silver rounds through her center mass. She went down and didn't get up. That left only the western attacker, still pinned by Carlos's overwhelming firepower. Nina approached him slowly, her remaining weapon raised, violet blood dripping from her own wounds. Surrender, she commanded. The Concordat offers mercy to those who submit to justice. The sanguivore's answer was a desperate charge. Carlos stepped aside at the last second, Trevor called the angle through the bond, and Nina's blade ended the threat. Silence fell over Whitmore Air Station, broken only by ragged breathing and the crackle of electrical fires. 4 sanguivore bodies lay scattered across the facility, already beginning to dissolve into ash that smelled like burnt copper. Trevor slumped against a wall, his entire body shaking with adrenaline crash. Through the bond, he felt Nina's exhaustion, her injuries, her overwhelming relief that everyone had survived. Sound off, Rita commanded, her military training evident. Everyone okay? Okay, Jack confirmed, though his hands were shaking. Alive, Carlos added. That was insane. No serious injuries, David reported, having stayed protected in the triage area throughout the fight. Trevor looked at his friends, these ordinary people who'd faced impossible odds because he'd asked them to. Thank you, he managed to say. All of you. You just saved Earth from an invasion nobody would have believed was coming. That's what friends do, Jack said simply. Before anyone could respond, the sky above the air station split open with light. A ship descended, sleek in silver, bearing symbols that made Nina straighten despite her wounds. Through their bond, Trevor felt her recognition and respect. The Concordat, Nina said quietly. They've arrived. Part 5, Humanity's Place Among the Stars. The Concordat ship landed in the center of Whitmore Air Station with barely a whisper of sound, despite its massive size. It was beautiful in a way that made Trevor's brain hurt trying to process it. The hull seemed to shift colors depending on the angle, flowing from silver to blue to something that didn't have a name in any human language. Symbols glowed along its surface in patterns that felt almost alive. A ramp extended from the ship's side, and figures began descending. Trevor had thought he was prepared for aliens after meeting Nina, but nothing could have prepared him for the diversity that emerged from that ship. The first being down the ramp had crystalline skin that refracted light into rainbow patterns across the ground. It stood at least 7 feet tall with limbs that seemed slightly too long for its body. What Trevor thought might be eyes covered most of its head, dozens of them, each one tracking different targets simultaneously. Behind it came a creature that looked almost like a bear made of living stone, moving with surprising grace despite its bulk. Then something that resembled a collection of floating jellyfish held together by crackling energy. A being that was mostly wings and light. Another that seemed to be made of liquid metal that held a vaguely humanoid shape. Through his bond with Nina, Trevor could feel her recognition of each species, her respect for the authority they represented. These weren't just random aliens. This was the Concordat itself, the governing body of civilized species across the galaxy. The crystalline being approached Nina first. When it spoke, its voice emerged from a device on its chest that translated the sounds into perfect English. Warden Nina. Your emergency beacon was received. We came as quickly as possible. Nina straightened, despite her wounds, and gave what looked like a formal salute with her fist over her heart. Commander Vex. The rogue sanguivores have been eliminated. Victor Drake is secured in storage room 7, paralyzed but alive. The human captives have been freed and will require medical attention and memory adjustment. Memory adjustment. Trevor interrupted, unable to stop himself. Through their bond, he felt Nina's warning too late. Commander Vex's many eyes focused on Trevor all at once. The sensation was overwhelming, like being studied by a microscope, an X-ray machine, and a lie detector simultaneously. You are the human bonded to Warden Nina. Trevor Walsh, age 41, former military, currently operating an agricultural facility. Farm? Trevor corrected automatically. I run a farm. And what did she mean by memory adjustment? The 7 rescued humans will have their memories of this event carefully edited, Commander Vex explained, its tone suggesting this was obvious. They will remember being kidnapped by a human criminal and rescued by human authorities. Contact with extraterrestrial species must be carefully controlled to prevent cultural contamination and panic. You're going to make them forget, Trevor said flatly. Everything they went through, you're just going to erase it. We are going to help them heal without the trauma of knowing the universe is far more dangerous than they imagined. The bear-like creature rumbled, its translation device making its voice sound like grinding rocks. It is a mercy, human. Trevor felt anger rising in his chest, felt Nina's cautionary worry through their bond. They deserve to know the truth. They deserve to make their own choices about. Trevor. Nina's hand on his arm stopped him. Through their bond, he felt her message clearly, pick your battles. Not this one. Not yet. Commander Vex tilted its head, several eyes swiveling to examine the defensive positions around the base. Warden Nina, your report mentioned human assistance. Please clarify. Trevor Walsh and 4 other humans participated in combat operations against the rogue sanguivores, Nina said formally. Without their assistance, I would have failed to neutralize the threats. Their tactical knowledge, adaptability, and courage were decisive factors in our victory. The silence that followed was profound. Trevor watched the various aliens exchange looks, or whatever passed for looks among species with such different biology. Through his bond with Nina, he felt her nervousness. This was apparently a very big deal. Impossible, the liquid metal being said, its voice like chimes. Humans are pre-contact. They lack the technology, the training, the biological capability to engage sanguivores successfully. And yet they did. Nina gestured to Jack, Rita, Carlos, and David, who stood together near the command center. They adapted their primitive technology in creative ways. They used teamwork and tactical thinking to overcome their physical limitations. And through my bond with Trevor, we achieved a level of combat coordination that I have never experienced with another warden. Commander Vex was silent for a long moment. Then it approached Trevor's friends, examining them with that overwhelming multi-eyed gaze. Jack stood his ground, Rita maintained military bearing, Carlos tried not to stare at the floating jellyfish creature, and David watched everything with a medic's clinical assessment. You understood what you were facing? Commander Vex asked them. You comprehended the danger? We understood that people needed help, Rita answered, her voice steady. That's all that mattered. Your weapons are primitive. Your armor non-existent. Your physical capabilities are minimal compared to sanguivores. Commander Vex's eyes swiveled between them. Why did you not flee? Jack laughed, the sound surprising everyone. Because we're human. Running from fights isn't really our thing. Besides, Trevor called us. That means it's important. That means you show up, no matter what. The jellyfish creature drifted closer, its energy crackling with what might have been curiosity. Fascinating. They display pack loyalty behavior typically seen in pre-sapient species, yet clearly possess individual intelligence and reasoning. They're not animals, Trevor said sharply, feeling defensive of his friends. They're people. Smart, capable people who made a choice to help. A choice that should have resulted in their deaths, the stone bear rumbled. And yet they survive. More than survive, they achieve victory. Commander Vex moved back to Nina. Your assessment, Warden. Unfiltered and complete. Nina took a breath, and through their bond, Trevor felt her making a decision that terrified and excited her in equal measure. Commander, the Concordat's policy toward Earth is based on the assumption that humans are too fractured, too primitive, too violent to join galactic civilization. I have seen evidence tonight that challenges every one of those assumptions. Explain. Trevor Walsh modified my fusion bike using tractor parts and irrigation equipment. He understood principles of graviton containment that most species don't grasp until they achieve space travel. Rita Walsh demonstrated tactical discipline that would meet Concordat military standards. Jack Coleman weaponized construction equipment in ways I have never seen documented. Carlos Mendez created silver-based ammunition specifically effective against sanguivores without any knowledge of our physiology. David Park established a combat triage center that saved lives despite using primitive medical technology. Nina's voice grew stronger, more passionate. And most significantly, through my bond with Trevor, I experienced something unprecedented. His tactical thinking complemented my combat abilities perfectly. He saw patterns I missed. He made intuitive leaps that my centuries of experience didn't provide. Humans may lack our technology and our physical abilities, but they possess something equally valuable: adaptability, creativity, and a determination to protect others that transcends logic. The various aliens conferred in languages that Trevor's mind couldn't process, sounds that ranged from crystalline chimes to subsonic rumbles to patterns of light. Through his bond, he felt Nina's hope and fear. She'd just gambled everything on defending humanity's worth, and the outcome would determine Earth's future. Finally, Commander Vex turned back to them. Humanity is currently scheduled for Concordat contact in 73 of your Earth years, once you achieve unified planetary governance and develop faster-than-light travel. This timeline was established after careful study of your species' development. Trevor's heart sank. 73 years. He'd be long dead. However, Commander Vex continued, and every eye on its head focused on Trevor and his friends, what we have witnessed tonight presents compelling evidence that our assessment may be flawed. 5 humans, with minimal preparation and primitive equipment, successfully engaged and defeated 4 veteran sanguivore predators. This is unprecedented. The stone bear stepped forward. I am Council Member Throck of the Concordat High Command. I have observed hundreds of species during first contact. Most respond to discovering alien life with panic, violence, or attempts to exploit the situation for personal gain. Your species' response was to immediately prioritize saving innocent lives. This speaks to a moral foundation that is rare, even among established Concordat members. What are you saying? Trevor asked, afraid to hope. We are saying that the Concordat will reconsider Earth's status, Commander Vex announced. A formal observation period will begin immediately. We will monitor your planet's response to limited, controlled contact. If humanity demonstrates the same qualities you 5 have shown tonight, adaptability, cooperation, moral courage, then perhaps you are ready for a place among galactic civilization much sooner than we anticipated. Trevor felt Nina's shock and joy exploding through their bond. This never happened. The Concordat never moved up contact timelines. Species waited centuries for this opportunity. There are conditions, the liquid metal being chimed. First, this base and all evidence of tonight's events will be sanitized. The rescued humans will have their memories adjusted. Official first contact must be handled through proper diplomatic channels, not through random encounters. Second, Commander Vex continued, Warden Nina will be reassigned to Earth as a covert observer and liaison. She will report on humanity's development and provide guidance where appropriate. Her bonded relationship with Trevor Walsh will serve as a test case for human-alien integration. Through their bond, Trevor felt Nina's explosion of emotions, joy, terror, hope, and something deeper that made his chest feel warm. She was being given permission to stay with him. Third, and most important, Throck rumbled, you 5 humans will serve as Earth's unofficial ambassadors. You will be contacted periodically for assessment and debriefing. Your behavior, your choices, your development will help determine whether your entire species is ready to join the greater galactic community. Jack whistled low. No pressure then. There is immense pressure, Commander Vex said, apparently not understanding sarcasm. You represent 7 billion humans. The Concordat will judge your entire species based partly on your actions. Choose wisely. Rita straightened to attention. Understood, sir. We won't let you down. We're not trying to impress you, Trevor said, finding his voice. We're going to keep being exactly what we are, humans trying to do the right thing. If that's good enough for your Concordat, great. If it's not, well, we'll still be here doing our best anyway. Through their bond, Trevor felt Nina's fierce pride and affection. Commander Vex's many eyes studied him for a long moment. Then it made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. Perhaps your species is ready after all. That attitude, that refusal to be anything other than authentically yourselves, is precisely what the Concordat values most. Commander Vex turned to its team. Begin sanitization procedures. Retrieve Victor Drake. Provide medical care to the rescued humans. The aliens moved with efficient purpose, flooding into the base with technology that made Trevor's head spin. Within minutes, they'd stabilized the injured, secured Victor's paralyzed body, and begun erasing evidence of the battle. The rescued 7 people were treated gently, their memories being carefully adjusted by the jellyfish creature using some kind of neural scanner. Trevor watched them being loaded onto the ship, alive and safe because he and Nina had fought for them. Because his friends had answered his call for help. Because humans, primitive and outmatched as they were, had chosen to stand up to monsters from beyond the stars. Commander Vex approached Nina one final time. Your official assignment, Warden, Earth Observation and Human Integration Assessment. Duration, indefinite. You will maintain your cover, avoid revealing your true nature to the general population, and report quarterly on humanity's development. Understood, Commander. Nina saluted crisply. And Warden? Commander Vex's tone softened slightly. Your bond with Trevor Walsh is unprecedented, a sanguivore and a human. Some on the Concordat Council will view it as a mistake. Prove them wrong. I will, sir. We will. The Concordat team finished their work and returned to their ship. Commander Vex paused at the ramp, looking back at the 5 humans who'd changed galactic history. We will be watching, humans. Show us what your species is truly capable of. The ship lifted off silently, leaving behind only scorched concrete and a group of people who'd never be the same. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Carlos broke the silence. Did that really just happen? Are we really Earth's ambassadors to space aliens? Apparently so, David said, shaking his head in disbelief. This is insane, Jack muttered. Beth would have absolutely loved this. She always said humans were capable of amazing things if we just worked together. Rita was already thinking tactically. We need to coordinate. Maintain regular contact. Figure out how to explain any future alien encounters without revealing the truth. She looked at Trevor and Nina. And you two are going to need a convincing cover story for why you're suddenly living together. Through the bond, Trevor felt Nina's amusement and warmth. I'm sure we'll figure something out, he said. His friends eventually headed home, promising to meet next week to discuss everything. Trevor and Nina stood alone in the ruins of Whitmore Air Station as dawn began painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. So, Trevor said. You're stuck on Earth now. With me. Indefinitely. Is that okay? Nina asked softly, and through their bond, he felt her vulnerability. The bond is permanent. You didn't ask for this, for any of this. I crashed into your farm and turned your entire life upside down. Trevor thought about his empty farmhouse, about 2 years of loneliness and grief after Amy's death. Thought about the excitement of working on alien technology, the terror and exhilaration of facing impossible odds. Thought about the feeling of Nina's presence in his mind, no longer alone even when they were apart. Yeah, he said, taking her cold hand in his. It's okay. Better than okay. We'll figure this out together. Nina smiled, and through their bond, Trevor felt her hope and affection and relief all tangled together. Together. I like that word. They drove back to Trevor's farm as the sun rose over Nebraska cornfields. The same fields where Nina had crashed just 2 days ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. Trevor's phone rang as they pulled into his driveway. It was the sheriff, calling about a report of strange lights at Whitmore Air Station. Trevor gave him a story about kids with fireworks, promised to check it out later. When he hung up, Nina was grinning. "Welcome to Earth liaison work," Trevor said. "It's going to be a lot of lying to authorities and making up increasingly ridiculous explanations for weird events." "I've hunted rogue sanguivores across 30 star systems for 200 years, Nina said. "I think I can handle small-town Nebraska." They spent the day finishing repairs on Nina's bike, which they decided to keep in Trevor's barn for now. The work was peaceful, familiar, both of them falling into the rhythm they'd established. Through their bond, they didn't need to talk much. Trevor would think about a tool, and Nina would hand it to him. She'd consider an approach to a problem, and he'd already be moving to help. As evening fell, they sat on Trevor's porch, watching the stars come out. The same stars Nina had crossed to get here. The same stars that now held new meaning for Trevor, no longer just distant lights, but homes to thousands of species, civilizations, wonders beyond imagination. "What happens now?" Trevor asked. "Now we wait," Nina said. "The Concordat will monitor Earth's development. They'll send observers, run tests, assess whether humanity is ready for the truth. It could take years. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we live. You run your farm. I learn what it means to be human, or at least to live among humans. We show the Concordat that bonds between species aren't just possible, they make both parties stronger." Trevor thought about that. Thought about the long road ahead, the challenges they'd face, the questions people would ask about the strange pale woman living on his farm. Thought about the Concordat watching their every move, judging all of humanity based partly on how well he and Nina navigated this unprecedented situation. "No pressure," he said, echoing Jack's earlier comment. Nina laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "We saved 7 people, defeated 5 rogue sanguivores, and convinced the Concordat to reconsider Earth's entire first contact timeline. I think we can handle a little pressure." She was right. They'd faced impossible odds and won because they'd worked together, human ingenuity combining with alien capabilities to create something greater than either could achieve alone. If that wasn't a message for the Concordat about humanity's potential, Trevor didn't know what was. 6 months passed. Trevor's farm became the unofficial hub for Earth's secret contact with the Concordat. Nina trained Trevor in alien technology and combat techniques while he taught her about human culture, agriculture, and the thousand small details of life on Earth. They developed a cover story. Nina was a distant relative who'd inherited property nearby and was learning farming from Trevor. The neighbors bought it, more or less. The Concordat sent periodic observers who materialized in Trevor's barn at odd hours, asking questions and running assessments. Commander Vex visited twice, its many eyes studying how Trevor and Nina worked together, how they'd integrated their lives despite such different origins. Jack, Rita, Carlos, and David met regularly at Trevor's farm, forming an unofficial First Contact Committee. They discussed how to prepare humanity for the truth, how to handle future encounters, how to prove to the Concordat that Earth deserved a place among the stars. One evening, Rita brought news from her security contacts. Unusual sightings were increasing worldwide. The Concordat wasn't just watching Trevor anymore. They were testing humanity's response to limited contact, seeing how people reacted to unexplained phenomena. "It's starting," Nina said, studying the reports. "The Concordat is moving toward official first contact. Slowly, carefully, but it's happening." "Because of what we did at Whitmore," Trevor said. "Because of what you did," Nina corrected. "You proved that humans don't need centuries of technological development to work alongside alien species. You proved that courage, creativity, and moral conviction matter more than advanced weapons." The Concordat noticed. Through their bond, Trevor felt her pride in him, in all humans. It still amazed him sometimes, this connection they shared. He knew when she was hungry, when she was tired, when she was struggling with her predatory nature. She knew when he missed Amy, when he doubted himself, when he felt overwhelmed by the responsibility they carried. More ships appeared in Earth's skies over the following months. Never enough to cause panic, but enough that governments started taking notice. Trevor's phone rang with increasing frequency. Government officials who'd somehow learned about Whitmore, researchers who detected Concordat technology, military leaders who wanted to know what humanity was facing. Through it all, Trevor and Nina maintained their cover, living quietly on a Nebraska farm while preparing humanity for the biggest revelation in its history. They trained others when the Concordat approved it, carefully selected humans who showed the same qualities that had impressed Commander Vex at Whitmore. 1 year after the night at Whitmore Air Station, Commander Vex arrived at Trevor's farm with an announcement. "The Concordat Council has completed its assessment. Humanity will be offered provisional membership, contingent on accepting certain limitations and guidelines. Trevor felt his heart racing. Official first contact. In 6 months. Time to prepare your governments, your media, your population. The Concordat has prepared educational materials and diplomatic protocols. You and Warden Nina will serve as liaisons during the transition period. Why us? Trevor asked. Because you represent what humanity can be at its best, Commander Vex said simply. The bond between you proves that different species can find common ground. Your actions at Whitmore demonstrated that humans possess the qualities the Concordat values most. You are living proof that Earth deserves a place among the stars. After Commander Vex left, Trevor and Nina sat on the porch watching the sunset. Through their bond, they shared a moment of profound satisfaction. They'd done it. Against all odds, despite having no authority or official backing, they'd helped bring humanity to the stars. So what do you think? Nina asked. Ready to be the face of humanity's first contact with alien civilization? Trevor grinned. I'm just a farmer from Nebraska who fixed an alien's bike. But yeah, I'm ready. We both are. Together, Nina said, taking his hand. Together, Trevor agreed. Above them, stars filled the Nebraska sky. Soon, those stars would no longer represent mystery and isolation. They'd represent opportunity, adventure, and humanity's place in a galaxy full of wonders. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, conflicts, moments when both humans and aliens doubted whether this could work. But Trevor had learned something important over the past year. Humans might not be the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most technologically advanced. But they had something special, the ability to adapt, to cooperate, to keep fighting even when the odds seemed impossible. And sometimes, that was enough to change the entire galaxy.